Giancola, you are a genius!
The cult film Tangents, later to be known as Time Chasers, was the first independent feature film shot exclusively in Vermont by Vermonters since the silent era. Almost 2 decades later, in this unique look back at the film's history, director David Giancola and cast come together to playfully reminisce and celebrate the anniversary re-release of the film. David Giancola founded Edgewood Studios fresh out of high school in 1987. Over time, he created a successful video production company, but his real ambition was to direct a feature-length movie. Giancola purchased a used 16mm Eclair film camera and enlisted recent Cornell University graduate Peter Beckwith to partner with him as producer, and Time Chasers was born.
I actually think it was the first dramatic feature made in New England by New Englanders. And the fact that it was made so crudely and so inexpensively and that it got such distribution and continues to be out there, I think is amazing.
I first became involved. How did I get here? A friend of mine who actually ends up in the film, Martin Geeky, calls me up one day. He says, you got to go down. They're looking for a stunt coordinator. You should head down and check it out. And so he stops over to my house, and I'd written a little audition piece because he was like, well, actor, stunt coordinator, go for the stunt coordinator thing. So I came down and did that and read for it. And, just read the piece that I'd written. And that was pretty much it. And then I read with a bunch of other people. Like a week or so later, David said, how'd you like to be in a movie? So that's pretty much how it happened.
I had told this production company up where I live, that I would do a play for them. And then I learned that they were having auditions for this. It was in the paper. They were having auditions for Time Chasers. And then they called me Tuesday and said, well, I guess we don't want to use you after all. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I hung up the phone with them, and I picked up the phone quick, and I called up David. And I said, David, my name's George Woodard, and if it's a possibility, I'd still like to audition for your film if you didn't get it all casted. And he said, I asked him if I could send him a picture and a resume. And he said, yeah, send it down. So I did. And he called me a couple days later and said, why don't you come down? I want to read you. So I did. And he didn't know me at all from nothing, so he wasn't locked into seeing me look like this, which is generally the way I look. And he had the flexibility, because he didn't know me, to envision me in a suit and a tie, and there you have it. There's the story.
My background was theater. I'd studied in New York and at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I graduated from there and had come home, and somewhere in there I fell in love and decided to stay in Vermont and not go back and pursue a career. And that's why when I met David, it was nice. He gave me the opportunity to do some dinner theater in the area and do some commercials.
Well, I worked with David Giancola since he was a little tyke and lugging around a 3/4-inch camera and going into the swamps of West Rutland. And so he was doing this film, and I guess he thought of me for the part.
And I'm in. 100%.
Good. I wasn't trying out for the lead role. I was trying out, I was reading for any part in the movie, and then, and then that happened. So it was cool.
The film's title was changed from the original Tangents on the advice of its distributor, Artist View Entertainment, whose president, Scott Jones, pointed out that the word tangent has different meanings in different languages, which would hamper international sales. Giancola and Beckwith were glad to defer to the distributor over the name, and even some major cuts in the film's edit to speed up its pace, as they were buried in debt by the time the film was finally completed. Jones's advice proved accurate, as the film would go on to be sold throughout the world. Fans spanning from Turkey to the Philippines, from Ireland to the Middle East, and almost every country in between would ultimately see the film, and eventually its popularity would increase even more from its broadcast debut in the US and UK as an episode of the cult TV series Mystery Science Theater. But back in 1990, the question remained: how would a 19-year-old, barely out of high school, handle directing a feature-length film?
My expectations for taking directions from a 19-year-old Having worked with David since he was a tyke, I knew exactly what to expect, and I wasn't disappointed.
So there was definitely some room in there, I think, within the script to be a little more yourself, or throw something out that just felt right. And Dave was real good about letting people do that, and then reining them back in when it was like not appropriate, or we're getting off task, or the scene has to convey a certain meaning. We need to get that in here, otherwise it's just words. No, I thought he did a great job at that. I think he's always had a knack for getting it done, and this being his first major endeavor, I thought it was a great success, to be working with him. And I didn't care how old he was. The kid was already successful, so. The kid, I said kid. I can't.
I wasn't bothered by the fact that he was young at all. And I think mostly because you know what he was talking about. You got a kid here. I don't think it depends on the age of the person if they know what they're talking about. And I don't necessarily mean bullshitting. This guy talked, and he knew what he was talking about. I've had good directors and bad directors in both theater and in film work. And it's nice to have a director who knows what he's doing, is in a timely fashion, so that you're not just sitting around. You sit around a lot anyway, but you're not sitting around with everybody kind of, well, what are we gonna do now? That kind of thing.
He was just a natural in front of the camera, behind the camera, and telling us what to do, and he worked with you, and it was a combination of your efforts and his efforts, and you worked together.
I think if there's one thing that I bring away from the whole experience, was just how interactive it was. In other words, everybody on the crew did everything. You just, it was a non-option to sit in a trailer and eat bonbons all day. You had to get out, you had to do something. And if you weren't holding lights, or running sound, or moving stuff, or setting up scenes, or taking them down, or packing them up, you were doing something all day long. And everybody did that. I mean, that was from people who were hired just to come on for 2 days ended up spending a week just helping out and doing stuff, and that's the reason it worked.
I think David is really a very special person and a very special director, because he sets, I know people say, 19, he knew from when he was very young what he wanted to do. I remember his dad giving him the choice, do you want to go to college? We'd like some money to work on your film, and he picked the film world. And I think at a young age, he was fairly sophisticated in knowing what he wanted to do.
It's nice to have a filmmaker who has got such a positive attitude that you want to work for him. And that's kind of, I think, how everybody that worked on Time Chasers felt about it. Because you have to do that. If a problem arises, you have to fix it. You got people standing around waiting to shoot or do something, you got to fix the problem. He pretty much was the only one on the set that knew what they were doing. He had to be the leader.
The thing that's always impressed me with David is whether I'm working as an extra casting director or production or a performer on any of his films, he always sets a wonderful tone.
The film's modest budget was financed by Giancola's video business, credit cards, and producer Peter Beckwith's side job waiting tables at a local steakhouse. As our interviews progressed, many interesting new facts and some production legends were obtained from the memories of the cast and crew about the film's arduous shoot.
I don't know if you heard the story about the plane. There's a big story about the plane. I don't know the whole thing, but it was from an actual crash. So it was the day we shot around the plane, it was very eerie. We had a very spiritual type thing happen, and everybody really felt the presence around that plane, so we were very respectful of each other that day. It was an interesting shooting day.
It's sad. It's sad, that a plane had actually crashed. But I don't know what else you could do. It does happen, and with car accidents too, if you're having a car accident scene, you're gonna use a car that was in an accident. It was a little creepy. Knowing that somebody actually either lost a life or and hurt really bad in it. Yeah, it's rough. But you do it.
It was a little weird. I think, as I recall, the makeup girl came over with like some anointing oil and blessed the plane or did something. It was and all of us because we were working in it or near it. Fortunately, we didn't know the circumstances, or at least I didn't know the circumstances of, how this plane came to be crashed, and, was anybody killed in this crash or whatever. So I think it might have been a little strange, but by the same token, it was, we're shooting a movie, we need a plane wreck, and this is where we found one. And so you kind of just move on, I think. We did some pretty crazy things with that plane. I mean, we had that plane halfway up on a tree. I don't know how safe that was, probably not at all.
I remember someone saying that we had taken the sequence at the end of the movie where Matt is climbing down the tree and the plane is kind of falling down on him. Again, check your records. Jurassic Park did a similar sequence almost 6 or 7 years later than we did that sequence. So maybe Spielberg stole it from me, who knows? But I made it before he did. He turned it into a truck and did it far better, but the idea was ours to begin with. We did it first.
Martin, come on. Jesus, relax, will you, okay?
Martin Gigi played the mechanic. Martin was a good guy, and he was good for the character, and he was funny. He came and did an audition. I said, this guy's great. And I think he actually came in with Matt or something. He came in with one of the other actors that we put in the movie. But the problem was Martin was a musician, so he would go play music all night, and then we would have this 6 a.m. call, and he probably, finished his gig at 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. So he would tend to show up whenever he felt like it.
It's too bad, too, because they did rewrite his part because he just was supposed to be there at certain times and he wouldn't show up. And like I said, he'd come a little later in the day and he'd stay for half hour.
And there's a scene in the movie where he's sitting on a stump and he literally says, go on, I can't go on any further. I'm not going on any further. That's it. And we literally, he showed up had a 6 o'clock call. I think he showed up at 3 in the afternoon, and I said, okay, everybody into the woods, and we shot that scene, which was not in the script, to get him out of the movie because I just couldn't put up with it anymore.
Come on! Listen, it's crazy. Guns being shot. You go play with the guns and the Uzis and the bullets flying at your head. That's what you want. And I'll be right over here, relaxing. When you're done, come back and get me. Fine. You're on your own.
And I've since used Martin's music in other movies, and we remained friends. But he was just in a place where he committed to doing the movie and he couldn't continue. And ever since then, I've been real big on if people can't give you 100%, then I don't put people in movies.
When are you from?
The 90s.
Look, please, just tell us what happened.
What's happened is obvious.
We'd shot a scene during the day. It was a fight scene in the morning, and I'd gotten my clothes completely dirty, grubby, and the scenes we were shooting in the afternoon couldn't look like that. So during lunch, this girl ran home and washed them, put them in her dryer, and dried them for what she thought was an hour, and took them out of the dryer, and the dryer was not on hot or something. Whatever it was broken. So she brought the clothes back. They were soaking wet. So I had to wear them for the rest of the day. And this is now, I don't know what it was, November or something. And we're shooting a scene late, 9:30. We were trying to get it done and wrapped up. And I think I had 2 lines to say, and it got to the point we shot it 3 or 4 times, and I kept forgetting them. Like I couldn't remember it. To the point where my script was actually on the floor in front of me, out of camera, and I'm doing a scene like this. I'm looking down and looking concerned and trying to read, and I couldn't even read it at that point. And so the makeup girl came over and she said, "Are you cold?" I said, "I'm really cold." And so I remember she put her hands like up under my armpits and she said, "Oh my God, he's freezing." And I'm going hypothermic. My body is just shutting down. And one of the first things is I want to go to sleep, and I have no memory. I'm blurred vision, and the next thing I know, I'm getting rubbed down by everybody, which was really kind of cool. Wrapped in blankets, and I was off to the hospital. And that was the end of that day's shooting. My favorite aspect of the movie, I guess, was just doing it, was having that opportunity to do it. It's something that just doesn't come to everyone's life, every other day. Oh yeah, let's go shoot a film. Let's go be a principal in a film. Let's go do all the stunts. I mean, other than the gigantic time commitment and what it took out of me physically and emotionally, it was a great opportunity, and I wouldn't have traded it.
I remember one that really drove us crazy was we had made a deal with the Living History Association to film the end of the movie where we place our actors in these reenactments of the battles of Bennington and the battles of Hubbardton. And it turned out that once we got there, that one of the reenactors, who was a general, didn't like it. And so he proceeded to tell us to leave. And I said, no, we have a contract. And what was really weird was he wouldn't break out of character as a British general. He was negotiating with me like I'm a British general negotiating with a filmmaker from 1990. You know, I'm like, you idiot, I have a contract and we're gonna film here and I'm gonna put my actors here, blah, 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 blah. And you know, we had driven everybody down to Bennington to do the filming, so it was a big deal. And finally we worked it out so we could film, but they said, you gotta stay here, you gotta stay there. And of course, I was pretty pissed off at that point, and I kept pushing the actors closer to the reenactors, and this guy was so pissed at us that he stopped the whole thing. You gotta remember, there's like a couple thousand people watching this thing. They do it once a year. He would stop the whole battle, tell us to get back. We'd stop, they'd start again. I'd do the same thing. He'd stop the battle like 3 times. But I got the shots I needed and it worked out fine. And that was one of the toughest things because the whole ending of the movie depended upon this battle.
My fondest memory during the shoot. Honestly, it sounds corny, but the camaraderie and the fun on set. And a lot of the fond memories come on the set while you're not shooting, while you're waiting and, you know, mingling with your co-actors. And those are my fondest memories.
Mystery Science Theater premiered Time Chasers on November 22nd, 1997. Today, it remains arguably one of the best episodes of the series. However, there were mixed reactions from the cast of Time Chasers because of Mystery Science Theater's hilariously incisive and very biting humor.
The Mystery Science Theater thing was a little rough, but you gotta learn to laugh at yourself and have a sense of humor in this business or you're dead. And I always knew that. They hit me really hard. We had a party when they first broadcast the movie, and we were all excited about the fact that it was going to be on the Sci-Fi channel. We didn't care that they were going to mock it, and we were all fans of the show, particularly the staff here at Edgewood. But I think the film opened up with a joke that was something like, you know, it says a Dave Giancola film on the screen, and I think the joke was, a Dave Giancola film is not something that you would like to see. And I figured, okay, after that insult, I can take just about anything. And that probably was the worst joke at my expense in the whole movie. And after that, I've learned that, you know, if you don't have a sense of humor about your work, you're going to spend a lot of sleepless nights worrying about stuff that doesn't matter. Some people like what you do, some people hate what you do, but I'm lucky enough to be a filmmaker that's successful enough that people keep buying what I do, so I keep doing it.
I never saw it until about a month and a half ago. Oh, really? Yeah. I bought a DVD of it. I saw it in the store, and I thought, oh, there it is, the one I've heard so much about. So I bought it. And I gotta tell you, the Mystery Science Theater thing was an irritation. The movie is better than the show. Because that show, oh boy, it was painful to sit through. Those gold dang robots jabbering, oh boy, come on.
I remember at one point, Mystery Science Theater, there was a joke in it where they say, oh, there's a director's friends who happen to own suits. And it's actually true. That was true. That was why they got the gig, you know? I mean, we were working on such a shoestring budget. That's why they got the gig. So I always thought the joke was on that. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But it made us laugh 3 times as hard as everybody else because it was true.
As the profile of the film grew over the years, it eventually gained a strong cult following with fans of sci-fi, time travel, and Mystery Science Theater. The film would be relicensed time and again for television all over the world after its original run. Many of the cast discovered a strange type of newfound fame as stars of a cult hit.
I actually got 2 letters over the past like 15 years, and both of them were hand-typed. Now talk about something that's a little bit creepy. That was a little creepy. It was like, it's a hand-typed letter on an old typewriter, you could tell, you know, and both of them just wanted an autograph and send it back. And I was like, well, that seems, you know, benign enough.
A guy that contacted me, he's an author from Texas, that emailed me, seeing if he could contact me. So I emailed him, and he gave me a site, and he'd gone on and on about Time Chasers on his website, and that was interesting.
But then I was told by other people, like, don't do that. That's something you probably shouldn't do. And I always thought kind of weird about that, because I always wanted to just, you know, he wants my name on a piece of paper, there's my name on a piece of paper, have a party, you know.
If that invention of yours can reduce fossil fuel consumption by 20%, think of the global consequences. Think of the benefits to Mother Earth. We can tell those ragheads to go screw.
It's right after the shooting of the film, there's a line in there when I talk about the ragheads. Nothing personal. It was just a line. I didn't write it. And there was a fatwa issued right after the film for me, and I had to kind of lay low and,
What was issued?
a fatwa. It's a holy decree for, well, to do me bodily harm by extremists around the world.
Giancola was determined to have as much action and production value in the film as possible, both to increase the film's commercial prospects as well as to fit his ambitious vision on such a small budget. No stunt doubles were used for the cast. Matt Brew, who had some professional training as a stuntman in Los Angeles, was recruited as stunt coordinator as well as carrying the lead.
I've definitely remained friendly with all the cast members. And I've worked with them subsequently. All of them I've worked with on other productions. And I've had fun with all of them because we all had shared that special memory of that summer of making that movie. I think Matt and I kind of got along better than anybody else because he was really willing to give it his all. And for example, the car stunt he did himself. He actually drove the car, and he was really into it. And I really beat him up. He had to run a lot in that. There's a lot of running in that movie, and he had to do it all. So as you may have seen, he's in good shape, but he was in good shape back then too. And the fact of the matter is that we got along really great. And we had a lot of fun, and literally, if Matt needed to slate his own scene, he'd do it and throw the slate away and do the scene. And he was great. He was great. He was kind of like an indestructible actor. Matter of fact, after I was done working with Matt, I had to kind of tone myself down because most actors can't take that much physical exertion during the day. Whereas with Matt, I'd film with him all day. He'd run around all day. He'd do all this work all day, and he'd be fine. He'd have a beer with you at the end of the shoot, and you were fine. But you can't do that with everybody. And I've had to learn to tone down my expectations with subsequent actors because they weren't in as good a shape as Matt was.
I don't think there were any stunts that I was afraid to do or didn't want to do, and that's the beauty of doing a low-budget film. There's just not a lot of money to spend on stuff. You can't rig up too much. It's got to be fairly simple. It's got to be safe. I think we pushed the envelope a little bit with what we had to work with. I think that's part of what comes out in the movie. We basically, you show up, you invent the scene, and you shoot it. What
I liked about Matt was, he had a unique look to him. And I know there was a lot of criticism on Mystery Science Theater. He can't be the hero, but that was my point, was that he brought a great sense of humor to the character, and he didn't quite look like the hero, and that was the point. I had a lot of other actors I could have cast that looked more like the hero, the Dudley Do-Right, with smaller chin. But, he was kind of an anti-hero, and that sense of humor was really important for me. Everybody talks about the mullet. The mullet was the style in those days, and although I'm sure it's being kept alive by a lot of, NASCAR fans now, the mullet was the style back then. If you go back and look, that was the style. Yes, I might have had something that was close to a mullet, and Matt definitely had a mullet, but the movie was, made, we started shooting in, I think, 91. So you're talking about the tail end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, and the mullet wasn't so bad as now it's really become infamous. Matt's mullet and chin have become legendary now, and it wasn't really thought of back then. It was just kind of the style. It was kind of hip back then. That was a long time ago.
Remember that when you're filming over like a 6 or 7 month period, which is what we did, I think, or maybe even 9 months, it was a long time. Seasons change, hair grows, I think that was an attempt to kind of keep it somewhat the way it looked maybe on the first day of shooting. At one point it was a lot longer, and we finally cut it back, and it just sort of stuck. As ugly as it seems today, it was, as David has said, it was very popular in the 90s.
The production, which was shot on weekends only to accommodate everyone's work schedule, stretched well over its original schedule from summer to fall to early winter. Finally, as the production came to completion, only a small number of the crew remained devoted to the project, which had been filmed on weekends for over 9 months with an all-volunteer cast and crew.
We're pretending to be in the future. We're pretending to be someplace. We're shooting in downtown Burlington on a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock or something like that before the mall opens up. It was inventive. Once again, with the budget we had, it was pretty inventive. And all of the scenes were shot in such a way so that it would look kind of futuristic without being without you being able to recognize anything. You know, and the thought of you know, how life might be in 2041. First of all, it's not that far away, so we'll know soon enough. So, I don't know. I think as part of the movie, we'd all like to see it better. We'd all like to pretend that, you know, yeah, maybe come, you know, 2041 that we will have gotten smarter, you know, and we won't be trying to beat each other up and destroy the planet all at the same time, and you know, we'll stop bullying the rest of the world. We'll sit down and just try and live with them. I'd like to think it's going to be better then.
I was always interested in the concept of the contradiction of time travel and how it related to who we are as people and how we are as a society. And I was a big fan of the original H.G. Wells' The Time Machine as a way of, I've always been a big fan of science fiction simply because science fiction, when it's done well, is a great way of showing by metaphor what the best that man can be is and what the worst that man can be is.
The whole thing was just a delight. I mean, the people were all, for the most part, really good to work with.
It definitely had an effect on the direction I took in my life, and certainly, again, I've been involved in other films. I was just in Illegal Aliens with Anna Nicole Smith and China, and some very talented actresses from LA, and a whole bunch of talented people, you know, and that's a great experience.
I wouldn't have traded it. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I loved every minute of it, and it was an experience I was lucky to have. I would do it again in a heartbeat. You know, we'll have the aging tangents now with old guys running and walking and beating each other with canes or something, but I don't know. Yeah, and we'd still flip cars. Oh yeah, that's sort of a staple, I think. So.
Finally, after a year of post-production, the cast and crew were happily reunited as Tangents premiered with great fanfare and a gala party in Rutland, Vermont. The film then ran theatrically throughout New England for several months. Giancola ultimately rotated 3 lone 16mm prints in theaters across New England, and even manned the projectors to get the film seen. This type of distribution was almost unheard of at the time, due to the major studio's domination of almost every theater screen in the country. In creating television ads for the film's release, Giancola hired a TV crew at the premiere. Audience members at the premiere were asked about the obvious sense of excitement and genuine surprise at seeing their small town on the big screen.
Oh, I thought it was great. It had a lot of action to it. Of course, filmed in Vermont, seeing a lot of things that are familiar was nice.
I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It was really good. I mean, it was really good. It was funny, and it had some really good spots in it. I mean, it was just a real enjoyable movie. I really enjoyed it.
The chase scenes were incredible. You used every mode of transportation known to mankind, and I loved it. He had to be an athletic actor, obviously.
I'd see it again.
Twice. It got better the second time. Outstanding. Rutland should be proud of David, I'll tell you.
Oh, it was very impressive, not just as something from Vermont, of course. It's a wonderful movie. We were on the edge of our seat the whole time.
I hope it gets a lot of people see it because it deserves it, definitely.
It started out as a project working with a fellow who seemed like a pretty nice director, and ended up working with a family. And it's just, the culmination has just been worth every minute that's ever been put into it.
Time Chaser's cult status remains as a historic record of the times, but it also stands as a harbinger of the coming wave of regional feature filmmaking, which exploded with the advent of low-cost digital equipment many years later. It also remains as an educational look back at the start of a young filmmaker's career, the true power of teamwork, and however often criticized as naive, to mankind's hope of a better and more peaceful future. Whether lived in 1777, 1990, 2041, or anywhere in between.
Nick Miller, you are a genius!
Time Chasers is finally coming to audiences in HD for the ultimate viewing experience. The sci-fi cult classic has been digitally restored for a new generation. For the first time in over 25 years, you won't need a time machine to experience Time Chasers as it was meant to be seen.
I'm gonna make you a part of history.
Coming soon on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital download.